What's up, San Diego drummers? Garet Speakman here with the San Diego Drum Academy. I want to talk to y'all about how to rehearse and what to rehearse. So this is definitely something that I think a lot of drummers get confused on, but in general, it's not how much you practice, it's more about what you practice when you are practicing. Okay, so we want to utilize that time as efficiently as possible. We don't have a lot of time, especially for, our working professional drummers. Time is limited. We have families, we have commitments, we have jobs, so maybe we get half an hour or an hour a day. So how can we utilize that time as effectively and efficiently as possible? And that's what I want to talk to you all about today. So there's a great book that I got all of this from. I won't take credit for it. It's called Funk Grooves by Fernando Martinez. So if you're into funk, this is an excellent book to grab. I highly recommend it. And even if you're not super into funk stuff, there are some principles and concepts within the preface of this book that can really help you grow as a drummer and just a musician in general. It's a great read. So what we have here, simple pie graph, okay? Now we have bigger areas and smaller areas. This is really important to understand. What we have here is technical studies, reading, groove playing, improvisation, playing with records, transcription, and then finally research and analysis, okay? So let's focus on the biggest areas of the pie graph, right? And Fernando, is a super professional drummer. He's played with some real heavy hitters, so he definitely knows what he's talking about here. And so let's dive in. So the three biggest in this pie graph that he's put together is technical studies, groove playing, and playing along with records, okay? Some of the smallest is reading, transcription, and research analysis. Okay, so I want to go through all of them. I'm going to start with the biggest ones, the most important in your practice time, the time you have delegated to rehearse. So, technical studies, that's by far the biggest one. That's when we're talking about things like molar technique, heel toe. We're looking at different rudiments. We're understanding how to really get that technique down, understand those rudiments, and be able to take those rudiments and spread them across the kit. Technical studies, you could consider learning a new type of genre, whether it's Afro-Cuban or Calypso or any avant-garde or rock soul, whatever that is, and you're studying how they put that groove together and how they use those fills, sometimes just on a drum pad. That's technical studies, okay? Very important. A lot of my students, I try and keep them just on the drum pad for as long as possible. Obviously we like to have fun and play the kit for at least 20 minutes at those first rehearsals, study groups. But yeah, focusing on that drum pad and really getting the technical studies of understanding how things actually work, super important. It's just like a pyramid, just like anything else. The foundation is the biggest part. That's why we've got technical studies as the biggest here. So the next biggest thing, definitely playing along with records. Very important. Just like any other instrument, drummers, we have a thing called ear training, and that's what playing along to records is. So you'll listen to that piece of music, you'll understand, okay, cool, so they're playing the kick, snare, hi-hat here on the verses, and then towards the choruses, they open up and they go to a ride pattern, what have you. Understanding what instrument on the drum kit is being played, when, and then trying to play that along with the record. In general, when we're doing this, we want to first play the record how it's recorded. Okay, so before we go buck wild and we start adding all these different fills and turning an 8th note based groove into a 16th note based and doing all this extra stuff, we really want to try to play the record as it's written, okay, as it's recorded. This will help us be able to understand what they did, and it'll certainly help us grow. We need to do that first before we try and add our own little touch, our own little flair to that piece of music. Very important. So playing along with records, very big. Groove playing. It's probably the third biggest thing in the pie graph that Fernando's putting together for us. So this is just, you know, you have a metronome in your head, and whether you're listening to a metronome is what I meant by that. Whether you're reading these grooves out of a book, or whether this is a groove in a body of work that you're trying to master, like a certain record or whatever it is, or whether this is just a groove that one of our instructors has asked you guys to learn to help expand your vocabulary, it's just simply listening to that metronome and locking in with that groove. Oftentimes, we think we've gotten it before we really have, you know? There's a lot of details in drumming, and we've got to give that attention to those details if we want to be able to master that sound and to be able to produce some really good sounding grooves. So groove playing, super important. Third biggest thing, improvisation, improv. So, you know, it's fun to just come into your room, your space, wherever you have your kit, and sit down, whether it's with a click or not, and just do a drum solo. Just get it out, right? Long day of work, whatever it is, long day of school, just come in and have a great time on your drum kit. Super important. On top of that, what you can do is play a groove and just tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna do this groove for 2 or 4 bars, and then I'm gonna take a 32 bar solo or whatever it is, you know? Just have fun improvising. It's very important. So I would say the next biggest thing on this is research analysis. I may have screwed up the sizing here. Research analysis is like, okay, so one of my favorite drummers by far is a cat named J.J. Johnson, right? So J.J. was with the Braun Brothers, and then he was with John Mayer, and now he's with Tedeschi Trucks Band. He is a super pocket, very for the song player. His grooves, I just, huge fan. So anyways, what would fall under research analysis is like, okay, what's JJ's history? How did he get to where he's at? You know, like, what were the steps he took? Who did he network with? Did he have an agent? Did he get picked up by a band? Did he send a tape to somebody to get the gig? How did that happen? You know, and then on top of that, it's like, okay, I'm listening to this record, completely separate from JJ, just under the category of research and analysis. I'm listening to this record and it has this really fast kick groove. Okay, well, how in the world were they able to get that kick groove together? It sounds like it's just one pedal. It sounds like it's not double pedal. Let me look up some videos to see if I'm right about that. Are they using a double pedal or not? You know, so looking up these different videos and just studying how they did it, whatever that it thing is, research and analysis, very important. Next biggest thing, transcription. So, you know, transcribing, it's kind of like a necessary evil. You know, you don't want to get too bogged down in it, is my opinion. You certainly don't need to transcribe every song you play or every groove you play. I kind of just use it as I really need it, personally. So, for example, if there's a solo that I'm trying to learn, I would transcribe that solo if it's very challenging. You know, if I can't learn it by ear, I'll transcribe it. You know, if you have 2 drummers going for an audition, this is a little analogy that I use sometimes. If you have 2 drummers going for an audition and one drummer says, okay, let me hear your music, I'll look over it, I'll come in, and I'll audition using their ear training. Okay, the next drummer comes in and he says, okay, cool, send me your music, I'll transcribe everything, and then when I come in, I'll have my charts and I'll I'll do the audition. You know, who do you think is going to get the gig? Probably the person who can learn it by ear, right? So personally, I put a much bigger emphasis on learning things by ear than transcribing. I use transcribing for when it's just too much craziness and I've really got to get into that nitty gritty and understand, you know, where everything on the groove or the solo is being placed. So transcription, very important. I'll go over transcription in another video. I'll show you guys how we can do it, where different instruments go. And again, Fernando Martinez, Funk Grooves, he talks about that too. So great book to grab if you want to learn a little bit more about that. And then reading, right? Which would be reading the transcriptions or reading a piece of work, just a printed piece of sheet music to understand the tune itself. Reading, also important. Everything on this graph, guys, is important. We should know how to do all of this, okay? It's not like just because these are smaller, we shouldn't ever do them. It just means that, you know, if we have an allotted hour of practice every day, you know, maybe we're gonna spend 5-10 minutes reading and then 5-10 minutes looking something up, like the double kick thing, or, you know, transcribing, trying to figure out this one bar solo or whatever it is. And then the majority of our rehearsal time should be technical studies, playing along with records, and improvising. Groove playing too. So yeah, you know, and it's not like we have to do all of this every single day. You know, say we have 4 or 5 days a week that we can rehearse for an hour each. Maybe it's less, maybe it's 20 minutes. You know, just make sure you really get in that technical studies. You really get in the groove playing, improvising, and then the playing with records, you know. And then maybe once a week, we do all 3 of these smaller ones. Maybe once a week, we'll read some music, we'll look up some different stuff that we've been trying to figure out, and we'll transcribe a piece of music or just a part of that music, you know. Yeah, so how we practice, very important, y'all. If y'all are looking to learn more about this kind of stuff from some cats that are doing live performances and some great stuff in San Diego, check us out at SanDiegoDrumAcademy.com and book your first lesson. All right, drummers, keep practicing. See you soon.